is the time management video found on studentlingo.com. And this is a really great website that is available to all students of Columbus State. You just have to log in with your username and password. It's a universal username and password. And as you can see, you can get a certificate if you complete the entire session. Now, unfortunately, you won't be able to get a certificate today because I'm signed in under my name, so I can lead this presentation. So if you want to earn a certificate for the time management session, you would just have to go through this process again. There is kind of like a quiz at the end that you would take to ensure that you are understanding what was just talked about. Okay, so the time management one, and there's tons of different topics on here. So if you need to know anything or if you want some assistance with anything, feel free to check some of these other ones out. There's really some great ones in here. And honestly, this presentation, the reason I use this video on this page is because it is by far better than anything I personally could have ever created. She goes very much, Lori Hazard is the presenter. She goes in extreme detail about why we're having you do the things or suggesting you do the things that to do in this presentation. And time management is one of those skills, kind of like writing a resume, that you need to do what's most comfortable for yourself. So she'll talk about different schedules and things like that. So if using an app is more in tune with your skill set than writing everything down, then you want to find an app that you could use. So I'm going to go ahead and let her get started.
My name is Lori Hazard, and at the university where I work, I'm responsible for all of the programs that are aimed at student success. One of the first strategies students need to be successful is the strategy of time management. But what I often tell students, it's really not about managing time blocks, it's about managing their behavior. So what we're going to talk about first is the idea of behavior management versus time management, and this idea of time on task. So what exactly is time on task? Time on task really addresses the question of how long will it take me to perform a particular task? So what I often say to students is experience breeds the ability to predict time on task. So for example, I've had many experiences where students have asked me to write a letter of recommendation. I've written so many of them over the years that I can predict time on task pretty accurately with that task. 45 minutes is about how long it takes me to write a letter of recommendation. So as a college student, you are going to have to learn how to predict time on task for college level activities. And there are differences between your time on task predictions from high school compared to college. So for example, let's say you're assigned a research paper or a literature paper, and you think back on high school and you think, well, when I had to write a paper for literature in high school, it took me about 2 hours to write that literature paper. So it would be normal for you to predict 2 hours time on task to write a literature paper if you're using your high school predictions. What often happens in the college environment is because the tasks are much more complex and complicated, it takes you longer to write a paper for a college level class than it would have been for a high school level class. So what happens sometimes is our time on task predictions are inaccurate when we're coming out of high school and going into college. So what you're going to have to do as a college student is readjust your time on task predictions based on your coursework in college.
Okay, so can anybody share an example of something that they can do faster with experience now compared to when they first did that activity?
I can share something.
Sure, please, good.
So I try to work out every day, and I don't know how long that's going to take me. But since I've been working out a lot, I know it takes me like around an hour and 15 minutes. So it's easier to like manage that into my schedule because I know how long it takes for me to work out.
Okay, and how long was it taking you to work out when you first got started?
Um, first I thought it only take me like half an hour or 45 minutes, and it took
Hmm.
longer than that. And
Okay.
then, so yeah, so that's how I learned, like, that's how long it takes me to work out, and then I can fit that into my schedule now. So yeah.
Perfect example. Thank you. Anybody else have an example? Kimber, are you muted?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Did you want to share an example?
For me, I've been playing piano for a really long time,
Mm-hmm.
and initially when I started learning how to play, I would only do 20 minutes a day, and that was just enough time for me to get through all my lessons and pieces that I wanted to work on. But now it's more of an enjoyment activity, and so I have to really be more rigid about how much time I'm spending doing it, because I'll end up spending hours and hours doing it for fun. And so I kind of have to, uh, plan around when it's gonna be most, I'll be most able to get in my practice.
Great. Thank you so much for that example.
So in order to manage your time and behavior well, you're going to have to really look at a particular time management system. And what I tell students is time management is in 3 tiers. The what you have to do, and that would be all the information included on your syllabus. The when you're going to do it, and that would be looking at the time that you have during the course of the week, and how are you going to go about it? Are you going to make to-do lists? And are you going to look at your daily schedule? So there are 3 tiers to time management: the what, when, and how. So first we're going to talk about the what. And again, the what is professor imposed and syllabus driven. So what do I mean by that? Professor imposed. It means that you have no choice about what the professor has assigned you over the course of the semester. That would include things on your syllabus like tests, quizzes, homework assignments. So in that way, it's syllabus driven. So you're going to have to look at your syllabus, and you're going to have to see what your professor decided that you needed to do over the course of the semester, and you're going to have to plan that out for a semester. What I actually do in my classes is I give the students the assignment that I described to you. That is taking all of the information from each of your syllabi and transcribing them into a master calendar. But while you're doing this, what you will want to make sure to do is to set concrete, specific goals. So right now we're going to take a look at a calendar of a student who actually did a pretty good job with this assignment. And if you'll notice, on Wednesday, for example, she put Chapter 8, Anatomy and Physiology, pages 124 to 129. What's really good is that she had a beginning point and an end point of a particular assignment. Start with page 124 and end with page 129. Most students, when they're setting up a calendar or when they're writing a to-do list, will write something like, read Anatomy and Physiology. Now I'd like to go back to that idea of time on task when we're talking about this, because let's take reading 5 pages in a class like Anatomy and Physiology. You might look at that and say, it's going to take me about 15 minutes to read 5 pages. Does that make sense? 15 pages in 5 minutes? Really, if you think about a course like Anatomy and Physiology, the subject matter is so dense, it might actually take an hour to master 5 pages of that complicated material. So what you have to do with all of your classes is read a couple of pages, see how long it takes you to do so, so you can accurately predict time on task for that specific assignment, and remember to set really concrete specific goals for each day like this student did. If you notice too, with her calendar toward the end of the week, on Thursday and Friday, she has 5 or 6 goals set for each day. And at the beginning of each week, she doesn't have as many goals set. What I'm guessing is this student probably has maybe an outside job, or perhaps she's involved in a lot of co-curricular activities outside of her classes. And for that particular week, she had a lot of time on Thursday and Friday to get schoolwork done. And so for those days, she didn't set as many goals on these school assignments at the beginning of the week as she did compared to the end of the week. Take a look at Tuesday, for example. She recorded Read Chemistry Section 3.4. Again, a really concrete, specific goal. It wasn't this vague, non-specific goal that she was going to do just like read chemistry. She set a specific goal. So this student has a chemistry quiz at the end of the week. So what she is doing is putting the large goal at the end of the week that she has a quiz, and then at the beginning of the week, she is breaking down all of the little things that she has to do to accomplish that large goal at the end of the week, all those short-term goals that she has to do to meet the long-term goal. So the challenge with this assignment is taking each of the pieces of the information in your syllabus and begin to really think about setting specific tasks that you're going to complete with a beginning point and an end point, whether it be page numbers, section numbers of a text, for example, however you'd like to divide up your reading. So that is the what, and then if you notice, she decided when she is going to do each thing, what day of the week she's going to do each task. So what the assignment is and the when is what the days of the week she is going to actually execute those assignments. There are a couple of other things that you will want to consider when it comes to the when as well, and that is what time of day are you going to get things done. So we have the what, the entire semester, the when, which is the days of the week, and taking a look at the daily schedule. What times during the day are you going to get it done? One last comment that I have for you regarding taking all of your assignments and all of the information off of each syllabi and transcribing it into a calendar is that when you're doing this exercise, you're going to notice that professors have different styles in terms of the way they record things on their syllabi. One professor might actually give you the concrete specific reading assignment, so you're not going to have to figure that out for yourself. So Professor Brown might say to you specifically that you have to read X number of pages on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. However, you might notice another professor, Professor Smith, just says, read chapter 8 and 9 this week. And for that professor, you're going to have to take your textbook, look at chapters 8 and 9, and then decide how you're going to break up your reading, whether it be by page numbers or whether it be by sections. And again, you're going to have to consider your time on task. How long is it going to take you each day to break up each of these assignments?
So any questions about the time on task and how to break up your assignments? Okay, we'll go ahead and, it doesn't seem like there's any questions, so we'll go ahead and move on.
What I'd like to talk to you about now is when during the day you are going to get specific tasks done. So in other words, for example, that student had chapter 8 in Anatomy and Physiology, page 124 to 129 recorded in her calendar. She knows she has to do it on Monday, but the question is, when on Monday is she going to get it done? And that's going to be driven by your class schedule, that is, when you have classes. And it's also going to be driven by something else, your own biology. Every human being has what we call a biological clock, and that's called your circadian rhythm. We all say things like, oh, I'm naturally a night person, or I'm a night owl, or I'm a morning person. I do my best work in the morning. Everyone has those preferences and tendencies. And I want to talk to you about how sometimes students can tend to work against their biology. There are actually these two nuclei in your brain. One is called the pinna, and the other one is called the suprachiasmatic. So the suprachiasmatic is a fancy way of saying your biological clock. That is the clock in your brain that keeps track of the 24-hour cycle of life. And then there's the pinna, and the pinna detects dark and light in the atmosphere. And these two nuclei frequently talk to each other. They communicate. So what happens is the pinna will say to the suprachiasmatic, hey, listen, there's light up there in the atmosphere. It's morning time. Wake this person up. And you'll notice that sometimes you'll even wake up before your alarm clock goes off, and you'll roll over and you'll say to yourself, oh, it's 6 o'clock in the morning and my alarm is set for 7 o'clock. Oh, good, I have an hour left to sleep. Well, isn't it funny how you wake up naturally at a particular time? And that's because your pinna notices that there's light in the atmosphere and says to your suprachiasmatic, hey, it's morning time, wake this person up. That's your circadian rhythm. And I want you to start paying attention to that because that's important relative to when you're going to decide to do your schoolwork. Okay, so I'd like to talk to you now about how a typical college student goes about using their time during the day. Maybe not every college student, but I'll tell you from my observations and working with college students over the last 20 years, this is what I've seen. They may roll out of bed and go to their 8 o'clock classes, and they have a few classes, let's say at 8, 10, and 12 on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and they've got time off in between classes. You'll notice with your schedule, some days you probably have a 2 or 3 hour time block in between your classes. And what I notice is that most students hang out with their friends in between classes. They seem to have a grand old time during the day. They do drag their butts to classes, they'll go to their meals, they'll have fun with their activities, and then they decide to start doing their schoolwork at about 8 o'clock at night. Maybe some students don't even start until 10 o'clock at night, and they'll do their schoolwork until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, fall asleep, and do the same thing over again the next day. Well, what I tell students is if you're doing this, you're really working against your biology. So let's go back to that idea of your circadian rhythm. Most people's high energy times are in the morning because that's when their pinner wakes up their suprachiasmatic and says, hey, wake up. Your metabolism is fastest in the morning and it slows down progressively during the day. And as the light in the atmosphere wanes, the pinna says to the suprachiasmatic, hey, slow this person down. Thomas Edison did us all a favor when he invented the light bulb because he gave us extra daylight hours to work during the day, which is what allows us to keep going and studying into the night hours. But really, if you pay attention, you're best to study during the daylight hours. And I encourage you to try this experiment. Take 2 hours during the day to do reading in your classes when it's nice and bright and light out, midday. Then take 2 hours from, let's say, 10 p.m. to 12 midnight and look at those two situations and figure out when you got your best work done. When did you get most accomplished? And I guarantee you that when you're at your best is during those daylight hours, as opposed to at night when you're starting to feel fatigue. And that's because your pinna is saying to the suprachiasmatic, it's time for this person to slow down and go to sleep.
Does anybody have any comments about that last section? Does anybody know like what their natural time of day is when they're the most alert?
I get a lot of work done in the morning.
Okay, so sounds like you're naturally a morning person.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself waking up without an alarm?
Sometimes, but most of the time I wake up with the alarm.
Okay. Anybody else? Now, what I found when I was a college student, what I found was easiest for me because I had so many responsibilities outside of school was to schedule my academic day from like 8 till 4 and try to get all of my study time, my class time and everything done during those 8 hours so that when I got off of work / school, I could then take care of my kids, take care of my family responsibilities, work my part-time job or my full-time job, depending on what I was working. But that's the thing too, is everybody has to figure out what is the best from that for them. I see Bridget commented that she also works best during the day. So just kind of try to figure out when are you the most alert, so that you're working with your circadian rhythm as much as possible. But we all know that sometimes due to all of life's responsibilities, that is not always possible.
So now that you understand the what of time management and this idea of circadian rhythm, we're going to talk about the when even more specifically. And how we're going to do that is really analyze and conceptualize your weekly schedules. That is how many hours you have over the course of the week to accomplish all of your tasks. So what I'd like you to do right now is click on the attachment and print out the document. If you don't have a printer right now, that's okay. You can go back and do this later.
We have an example of one of these weekly schedules that we'll be sending out as a follow-up. So don't worry about too much about printing this out.
So now that you have this grid sheet in front of you, what I'd like you to do is look at it and record your fixed commitments onto the grid sheet. Right now, your main fixed commitment is college. So what you want to do first is record your class schedule onto this grid sheet. Once you've completed that major fixed commitment that you have in your life, think about the other fixed commitments you have. Fixed commitments are things that won't change during the course of a week. So for example, do you have religious ceremonies that you attend on the weekends? Do you have a particular club or organization that you participate in every Wednesday afternoon? Do you have other fixed commitments that won't vary week to week? That is, for the 15 weeks of the semester or for the 10 weeks of the term, they will stay solidly the same exact way. Those are your fixed commitments. So right now, I'd like you to take the time and record all of your fixed commitments onto this grid sheet.
And notice she has social activities and athletic kind of exercising fun stuff. The important thing to remember about being a successful college student is you still need to make time for these things. Your years in college should not be school study, school study, school study. You need to still make time for the different ways that you maintain your mental health, especially in the days of COVID. So if you have a set TV show or a book club or religious activities that you do for your mental health, keep doing those things while you're a college student. You just may need to figure out how to balance those. So that may mean that you need to take less college classes, which means that you'll be in college longer. But you have to be okay with that, and you have to just maintain your mental health, your physical health, along with your academic studies. So all of those things are just very important.
So now that you've considered your fixed commitments, you might want to think about variable commitments. Let's say you have a part-time job and you work about 15 hours a week. One week your work schedule falls on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. The next week your work schedule falls on Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday. That would be a variable schedule. So that you wouldn't want to include on the grid sheet. That would be something that you'd want to change every week. But there are other variable commitments, things that you have a tendency toward. Let's say, for example, you like to watch American Idol or The Voice on a particular night of the week. And you know that every Tuesday night, no matter what you have in terms of homework assignments, you're going to end up in front of the television. I tell students to know that that's a variable commitment and record that on your schedule, because you know inevitably you're going to end up in front of the television and you're not going to be doing your homework. But you need to be reasonable about those variable commitments. You might also decide that there are certain times each week that you'd like to go to the gym, or there are certain times of the day that you tend to have your meals. Put those things in your calendar right now so you can kind of see what's left over for studying and homework. So now that you've analyzed your schedule and recorded.
And recording all of these things also helps your family know your commitments to school, so that I always like to use the example. So mom's not going to tell you to go do some laundry when it's supposed to be your biology class or something like that. So hopefully they will respect the time that you need to devote to school as well.
Most of your fixed commitments and some of the variable commitments, you're done putting your meals in, your commuting time, and perhaps those habitual leisure activities that you tend to do every week. I want you to take a look and see what time do you have left over. That is, now you have to decide when are you going to be doing your schoolwork. I typically say to college students, everyone needs a day off. Everyone needs to take at least one day a week off. Otherwise, you'll be feeling like you're operating in burnout. For a typical college student schedule, Saturdays is typically a good day of the week to take off. So see if you've removed Saturday from your schedule and look at the rest of the days now. And you can find at the very least, I'm guessing, 25 hours left over in the week that you can dedicate to your schoolwork. Now you might be saying, gee, that sounds like a lot, 25 hours a week for schoolwork. But there's a concept in higher education called the Carnegie Standard. And what that means is professors expect students to be studying at least 3 hours for every hour in class. So for example, if you carry a 15 credit hour course schedule, the expectation is for you to be doing at least 45 hours of schoolwork outside of your class schedule. So that's why I'm saying on the low end, see if you can find at least 25 hours of time left over in your schedule to dedicate to your schoolwork. And on the outside, you can push it up and see if you can squeeze in 45 hours a week. Now, sometimes it's not easy for students to do this and find that kind of time. But believe it or not, there's a way to find a well-balanced schedule, still stick to the Carnegie Standard and those professor expectations, and still squeeze in some leisure time for yourself. Okay, so 45 hours a week, you're probably saying, this lady is crazy. Where am I going to find 45 hours a week outside of my classes to get my schoolwork done? This is nuts. Well, I'm going to challenge you to think about something that I call the 888 formula. So I'm going to say it is possible to have a balanced life of work, leisure, and school. So let's think about this. You have about 8 hours that you need to sleep a night. There are 24 hours in a day, right? And I say to students, don't cut out the 8 hours of sleep. Your body needs time to heal and rejuvenate. You need that for a healthy lifestyle. You need that so you don't get sick. So 8 hours of sleep. 8 hours of time put towards school. You're in classes for about 3 hours a day, give or take, and you need to put about 5 hours a day into schoolwork. If you multiply that by 6 days a week, you've got 30 hours. Then there's 8 hours left for leisure time. So what students say to me is, what if I have a job outside of school? What about family commitments? If I'm a student athlete, then what I do? Well, I tell students that school is a sacrifice, and probably if you're going to have to steal time, it's going to have to be from your leisure time. But you can balance your time with the 888 formula. I say to students, think about it. You have to sacrifice for about 10 or 15 weeks, then you get a break, then another 10 or 15 weeks, and if you can stick to the 888 formula for that fixed amount of time, for that 15 weeks, there are always little islands of vacations in between or long weekends so that you can make up for the particular time that you're sacrificing using the 888 formula.
Okay, so at this point, I do disagree slightly with the presenter, especially those students who have family commitments. It's nearly impossible to get out of your family commitments, even being a college student. Nobody is going to tell their children to go sit down and be quiet while mom does schoolwork. That's either not realistic or just not possible. So we can't stop being parents or stop being spouses just for those 10 to 15 weeks. So you have to figure out the balance in other ways. This is also a reason why we need to have a really good support system around us. It should be, look to your spouse, significant others, look to your parents, your friends, extended family members. Build that support system so that you can be successful in college. I don't know anybody who has gone through college without using family or friends in some way to help them get through. And this is speaking from experience myself. It took me 9 years to get my 3 college degrees. Some semesters I was a full-time student at 12. Some semesters I was a part-time student. I never was able to take the minimum 15 to 16 credit hours in a semester because I simply did not have enough time. So the most heavy course load I took was a 14 credit hour semester, and I still can feel the stress of that semester to this day. And I've been done with school. I graduated with my master's back in 2006, and I can still remember the stress level that I felt trying to do 14 hours and work and take care of my family. So I do understand it can be very stressful.
So now that you understand the what of time management and the when of time management, the biggest challenges students have is following through on those commitments that you've recorded and that you've decided you're going to do. So what I'm going to do now is to give you a wide variety of tips to help you follow through on those commitments. Tip number 1 is planning for a suitable place to study. When you're deciding where you're going to be doing your studying and homework, it's key to find a distraction-free environment. Typically, your residence hall room or your bedroom at home is not a good place to study. There are too many distractions in that environment. What you should do is find a distraction-free environment like a room in a classroom building on your campus or in the library. So number 1, plan for a suitable place to study. Number 2, find a regular time that studying works for you. It's really key to get into a good habit. So if you can decide each day what are your best hours to study, I would get into the habit of studying at the same time every single day. Some researchers say it takes about 30 days to form a habit. And if you think in terms of a semester or a quarter being only 10 or 15 weeks, and you take 30 days to form a habit, that means you'll be 4 weeks into the semester before you're in the groove of studying at a particular time each day. So I suggest to students right from the outset of a new term or a new semester, study at a regular place and a regular time each day. So number 3, we've already talked about a little bit. That is study at your periods of maximum alertness. And that goes back to the circadian rhythm. We do know for most human beings, periods of maximum alertness occur during daylight hours. Although each human being's circadian rhythm will vary a little bit, it's good for you to figure out when your periods of maximum alertness are. Some people are better at 6 a.m., some people are better at 10 a.m. But in as much as you can, make sure that you pick times during the day that you feel alert and you study at the same time each day.
Any questions about that? Those first 3 tips? Any comments about them? How does everybody feel about those first 3 tips?
I have a question.
Sure.
So, the video said that on Saturday you can take a day off, but like, what does she mean by day off? Does she mean like not study at all?
Yeah, to kind of like leave that as a day for yourself. So whether you're spending the day doing something fun and relaxing, whatever you want that day to be. So you're not doing school studying, work, school studying. You're giving yourself a day to breathe, so to speak.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Bridget commented that she tells herself she has time and usually waits till the last minute to do stuff. I have to admit, I can be like that myself, and I can tell you that that does increase your stress level. So hopefully using the tips in this time management session, you can break some of those habits and get yourself a little bit more organized and structured, so it may help you. So please feel free. I also have put my email address in the chat, so please feel free to contact me if you would like to set up a one-on-one and we could chat.
Number 4 is limit your blocks of study time. So I typically tell students, don't study for more than 2 hours on any one course at a time. Think about your attention span. Most people's attention span will wane after about 2 hours, and your mind will begin to wander and you won't get productive studying done. So when you're thinking about creating time blocks for studying, keep them at just about 2 hours. So number 5 is set specific goals for each study unit. You got a chance earlier on to see a student recording very concrete specific goals into her calendar. That's what you're going to do. Instead of writing something in your calendar like read economics, you're going to be very specific and detailed. You're going to record something like read economics page 55 to 75. So you have a beginning point and an end point to your goal. Each goal should be specific and concrete. Number 6 is give equal time to each subject that you're taking. We have a tendency to gravitate towards subjects that we really like and spend more time on those and avoid subjects that we feel a little bit challenged by or we don't like as much. So if you can think about giving equal time to every subject matter, chances are you'll fare well across the board in all of your subjects. Tip number 7 is to complete all of your assignments as soon as possible after your lecture or class. The reason I give you this tip is because our memory tends to fade 24 hours away from a class lecture, 48 hours after a class lecture. So if you can do your work right away after class, your memory retention will be stronger and you'll be more productive and more efficient in getting the assignments completed.
Okay, so I just have a few comments about these few tips right here. Organizing your assignments. will allow you to color code. If that's one of the things that you like to do, you can do that with highlighters, colored pencils, colored markers, whatever works best for you. I believe Lisa's portion, she'll show you how to color code in a calendar. Completing assignments as soon as possible is a great idea. It'll help keep your memory fresh to that material. And that, again, highlighting information in your textbooks so that you know what to go back and study later, or if there's words within that chapter that you don't quite understand what they mean, it's a good idea to highlight that so you can go back and get the definition. And also the portion about what was the sixth step? Anybody want to help me refresh my memory? Never mind. We'll come back to it if I can remember. This session was definitely not about memory.
Tip number 8 is perhaps one of the most important, and that is provide for a spaced review. So you've heard about the idea of cramming. Cramming is when we smush all of our studying into one discrete amount of time, like studying for a test the night before. Cramming is called massed practice. Then there's something called spaced practice, which means doing a little bit of studying each day. That's the better way to learn and study in college, is to do what we call spaced practice. So you want to spread your studying time over a period of a week. So it's really important to plan out your time management activities so you can be sure that you've left yourself enough time for a spaced review of material.
It was regarding avoiding topics. So everybody's got their own strengths and weaknesses in subject matter. What we don't want to do is we don't want to avoid the stuff that we're not good at just because we're not good at it, because that just creates more work later, which then throws off your other subjects as well. I remember when I first started advising many years ago, I was working with a student who had completed all of the requirements for an associate's degree, and the only requirement she had left was math. And when I asked her why you hadn't taken any of your math classes, because she had 4 semesters worth of math classes, which is 2 years of math classes. She said, I just don't like math. And I said, well, now unfortunately you've pushed out your ability to graduate another 2 years just because you avoided these math classes. So remember things like that, that you don't want to avoid your work. You want to get tutoring, do what you have to do to pass these classes, but don't avoid it because it will throw off the rest of your timeline and the rest of your schedule. Sorry, I couldn't remember that before.
So it might seem like all we've talked about is work, work, work. I'm not suggesting that. As a college student, you should be enjoying your leisure activities and getting involved on campus activities. So having said that, my next tip is to plan a schedule of balanced activities. And that goes back to the 888 formula. If you follow the 888 formula, you should have enough time for your schoolwork and enough time for your leisure activities, so you have a life of social and academic activities balanced. Number 10 is trade time, don't steal it. You might be asking what this means. Well, when we get really efficient at time management, we'll notice that we become more and more productive, and this creates a tendency to fill up our calendars with all different kinds of activities. And what happens when we do that is something exciting could come along that we want to participate and we want to do, but we can't because we've smushed so much activity into our calendars. So what trade time means is, for example, let's say that you've planned out a pretty busy week and your friend says to you, look it, I have concert tickets. Would you like to go with me on Thursday night? And you look at your calendar and say, gee, I don't know if I can. I have to do X, Y, or Z. Well, if you get efficient at trading time, that means you can move the time blocks of commitments you made to other areas of your calendar. So trading time, not stealing it, gives you a way to continue to balance those leisure activities against your work activities and the accomplishments that you've set for yourself.
Any questions about that little section before we proceed? Okay, moving on.
So I hope you'll implement all of these strategies that I've given you. It's very easy to record all of your information into a calendar and to set up a schedule to follow each week. The hard part is implementing them. And if you follow these 10 tips and work with the 888 formula, I'm confident that you'll be able to implement all the success strategies related to time and behavior management that I've given you today.
Okay, so at this point, I turn it over to Lisa so she can show you some examples about how to set up your calendar and color coding. So it's all yours, Lisa.
Okay, it's every time I unmute it, it remutes itself. So I think we're good now. Okay, well, thank you, Stacy. That was very informative, and I think we all learned a thing or two. We have about 10 minutes left. What I'd like to do is show you, give you some examples about what we were just discussing and how you can implement it. Then I'll also go in a little bit about tutoring. To show you how to access tutoring and answer any of your questions on both these subjects. So I've brought up my Outlook calendar, and I wanted to show you what we were just discussing on putting in our class time, our study time, and when assignments were due, and then color coding it. So anytime you look at your calendar, if you look at your calendar right now, you know that the green is for organizational leadership. Now, before we set up our study time and our assignments due, we want to look at our syllabus. We also want to look at the calendar in Blackboard, and we also want to watch our emails. During COVID, the instructors I know are doing all that they can to get the information to the students. And most classes, all the information is in the syllabus. Other instructors add it to their calendar. I worked with a couple students whose instructors had a rolling 2 weeks. So the instructor had in the calendar what was due for 2 weeks. And then next week they would add a week. And so all classes right now aren't 100% consistent. So one thing you do want to recognize and make sure you understand is how the instructor is going to put the information out for you to see when the assignments are due, and what discussion times and tests and when those are due for that class. Now, quick question to see if you remember from the first part of the presentation with Stacy. How many hours per week should you study per credit hour that you're taking? Do you all remember? You can either put it in the chat or
Bridget commented.
Thank you.
And Kimber both commented three.
Very good.
3 per credit hour.
Yes, that is a Carnegie Mellon standard. Very good. And so we always say at least 2 and try to put 3 in. So thank you. Thank you for remembering that. And that's very important. So what I tried to show here in the essence of time, since we just have about 8 more minutes, my class, Organizational Leadership, that is in theory, a 1 credit class. So with a 1 credit class, how many hours of study time should I put in my calendar? At least 1. Yes, thank you. Bridget, 3. Very good. So, and Brenda, thank you, 3. So minimally, 1, definitely, but according to the Carnegie Mellon standard, you need 3 hours. So what I did, I looked at my schedule. I have my work time, and then I made my organizational leadership class kind of a teal color, and that would meet for an hour at 8 o'clock every Monday. I've added my 3 hours of study time, Wednesday is a good day for me. I don't have a whole lot going on Wednesdays, and that 3 hours consistent consecutive time I can put in from 5 to 8. I can even, if I have my dinner ready, I could even eat dinner while I'm studying, kind of multitask. But that is in my calendar. Now with this class, there is a weekly assignment that's due at midnight. So I've also added that to the calendar, that my assignment is due every Sunday night by midnight. So I say 11 to 12 just to make sure I get it in, but gosh, wouldn't it be nice if we could get it in earlier in the day? When I work with students, yes, this is when it's due, but oh my goodness, wouldn't it be great if we could really just put it earlier in the day, get it in, let's say by 1, and then not have to worry about it for the rest of the day. And then the discussions are due for this class every Friday night at 11. And I've seen many instructors that have items that are due at 11 o'clock on Friday. And now in COVID, I can see where it's a little bit more convenient, but when we're back on campus and back out and about, I don't consider that a real convenient time to submit assignments, 11 o'clock on Fridays. So I would suggest clicking that up earlier in the day, let's say about 2. So we can get, my Friday afternoons are pretty free. So get my discussions in earlier in the day. Now, because I have set up 3 hours on Wednesday, this is my study time, but it's also my time to prepare for my discussion and to prepare for my assignment. Oops, keep that back over here. So during this time is when I will get the bulk of the information done. I could always turn it in when I'm done, but just in case I needed any proofreading, last minute ideas, I keep this on the calendar at all times, reminding me that I do have to turn it in. Now I'll show you real quick. Let's say for the discussion, if I wanted to do some last minute just review, or I found an article that I would like to add to my discussion. With Outlook, you don't just double click on the time frame where you want to add an event. And here I will just add an hour of studying, let's say. And so let's make it from 1 to 2. And I've categorized this class, what color? Teal. And then I'll just go ahead and add it to my calendar. So I've now added an hour of study time before my discussions are due. I can use it for my discussions, or if I also want to put some last minute notes into my assignment that's due on Sunday night. Are there any questions on this? And then you would do this for each course, and each course to have a different color. So if you wanted to print this out, just easily by looking at your calendar, you can see what your week looks like for that course. Any questions? And real quick, I have a couple minutes left here. I want to go into tutoring. How many of you have used tutoring at Columbus State, the online free tutoring? Has anyone used the online free tutoring?
I used it.
Oh, good. How did you find it?
Okay, so I went looking for Math 1146, but then all rooms were closed off, I think.
Ah, well, let's real quick. We'll show you how to get in, and I have another option for you.
Okay.
And also, I put this study time here on Friday. I'll show you how within the tutoring, either our internal writing center at Columbus State or with a service we partner with, NetTutor, you can submit your papers for your weekly assignments and just submit it, and they will have it back to you within 24 hours with any ideas or corrections. So this study time I put here is kind of a duo mode to get any last minute things done I need for the discussion, but also between my Wednesday night studying and my Friday, if I could have my paper done, at least mostly done, and then submit it to NetTutor, I will have some suggestions back from them Saturday afternoon, and I can incorporate those changes into my final assignment. So to get to NetTutor, you'll go to your course in Blackboard. And I switched over to Blackboard here, and I teach a Starfish training class. In every class you have at Columbus State, you'll find this little green N in the upper right-hand corner. And when you click on that little green N, first you'll have to say yes to, I agree to the terms and conditions. This is everything these days. But you'll see that you have two options, a blue and a green, or Pisces and NetTutor. Pisces are the internal Columbus State tutors. So I'll click on this real quick. And here's where you would submit your paper to the Columbus State Writing Center. And what was the math class that you were looking at? The math?
1146.
1146. Let's see if we can go here. This gives you the hours that tutoring is available. And these are the Columbus State tutors. You click on this down arrow, and this tells you what tutors are available. And to join the room, you just click here. Okay, Ina has a session open. Christine is busy. Let's see here. Fast has a couple. So there's just, let's say, 2 sessions open right now. You can always join a session. Let's say if you want Bonnie, you could join it, and then you'll just be the next person in line when she finishes with the previous student.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Of course. Now, one last thing I want to show, and our tutors are available for the most part, 8 to 9, kind of normal standard business hours. If the company that we partner with is NetTutor, and we use the software that NetTutor uses for tutoring. And so here we have Pisces, which is the internal Columbus State tutors. There's also the second option, NetTutor. You can submit your papers to their writing center, and it will be back in 24 hours in what's called a locker. And I'll show that to you real quick. When you submit your paper, it's right here, drop off a paper, they will put it in your locker. And so this is where you will come to get your paper. And this is true for both NetTutor as well as Columbus State tutors. Now, one thing I want to show you with math, oops, I've got ahead of myself here. I really want to go back. There we go. I hope. No, I really want to go to math. Let me go to math. Yay. Okay, so if we go down to math, one thing I want to show you with the NetTutor tutors, look at their drop-in hours that they're available. 24 hours a day. Now, as we just saw, and of course we don't want you to be needing to see your math tutor from 11 to 7 o'clock in the morning. But just to let you know, there is always someone available 24 hours a day with all of your math courses and all of your English courses. Okay, and it's really easy here. You just drop into Meet a Tutor, and your wait will always be under 5 minutes. Okay, so if you cannot meet with jump out of here so I don't actually join into a session. If a Columbus State tutor is busy, you always have the option to go to the NetTutor tutor. Okay, so there is free online tutoring available 24 hours a day for math and English, and then standard hours for all other courses. Now, any questions? We've gone over 2 minutes, but I just want to see if you had any questions that we might be able to answer.